Today on Let It Rip Weekend, we're taking a break from the bickering to honor Aretha Franklin. She grew up with Motown greats like the Four Tops, the Contours, Temptations, Diana Ross, and the Supremes, but she never signed with Berry Gordy. Why not? Also, how did Aretha Franklin's famous father, the Reverend Dr. C.L. Franklin, influence her career? Let It Rip Weekend starts right now. Love that song. All right, thank you for joining us. I'm Charlie Langton. All right, today, Let It Rip Weekend. Detroit historian Ken Coleman joins me here. We're talking about Aretha Franklin. He has written quite a bit about her. We're going to find a little history about Aretha Franklin. Next to him, Thelma Stubbs Mitchell. Now, you may remember someone named Levi Stubbs, maybe the Four Tops. This is his sister. Thelma, good seeing you. Thanks for being here.
You, Charlie.
And you may remember a group called the Contours. If I remember Joe Billingslea, it's one of Motown's first and biggest hits in Motown. You are the founding member of the Contours.
That's right.
I love it. Thank you, Joe. Linda Solomon also joins us. Well, she is one of the premier photographers in maybe the country, and has had a 40-year relationship with Aretha Franklin. What a panel we have here. Thank you for being here. I want to start with you, though, Ken. Historian, Detroit. It's too easy to say what influence did Aretha Franklin have. But I want to go back a little bit, though, into the early days.
Sure. Back
when she moved into the city of Detroit in the 60s. Her father really had a big influence on her. True?
There's no doubt. I mean, the Reverend C.L. Franklin was a leading pastor, not only here in Detroit and in Michigan, but throughout the country. First name basis, first name family relationship with the Reverend Martin Luther King. Aretha grows up in all that, and she's influenced by gospel singers, gospel greats like Mahalia Jackson, but also R&B singers like Dinah Washington.
And one of the interesting things I found out that one of her first kind of big performances at the Flame Bar, she was advertised as the daughter of Reverend C.L. Franklin.
Yeah. You don't often see somebody in their first nightclub appearance and being billed as the daughter of a pastor. But that's how she was billed. She was 21 years old. It was at the Flame Show Bar in 1963.
Thelma Stubbs Mitchell. Thelma,
hi, Charlie.
How are you? Good to see you again.
Thank you.
What are those Four Tops? I don't remember what's any song. Can you give me a little Four Tops?
Sugar pie, honey bunch. You know that I love you.
Joe, you enjoyed it. Okay, you're all right.
Do you love me?
We'll get some Contours in a minute.
We're playing two shows nightly.
We're doing two shows. That's right. They're performing. Listen, when you were growing up there, Aretha Franklin, what do you remember her in the early days?
Well, I remember, first of all, my mom listening to Reverend C.L. Franklin on the radio. That's all we heard at home was Reverend C.L. Franklin. And then I knew Aretha through my wonderful brother, Levi. One night she went to Youngstown, Ohio, where my older brother had a club there. And she was about 21. And she sang there. She could sing for the common person or in a bar, or she could sing for kings and queens.
Yeah.
All right, let me get to Joe Billingslea. By the way, the pictures that we're showing here are pictures by Linda Solomon. Let me get to Linda in just a moment. Isn't that great? I love that. Joe, let me get you Contours. When the Contours came out, their Motown, there were so many good acts, Diana Ross, the Supremes, Temps and Tops, and of course, you guys, the Contours. But Aretha Franklin, despite the fact that she knew you and she knew other people around her, she never signed with Motown. Why?
Well, what she told me and told the group in '63 when we performed with her, she told that her father didn't want her signing with Motown. So she didn't sign with Motown.
And why was that?
I have no idea. If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. No, but I really have no idea.
There is some sense that the Reverend Franklin didn't really trust Aretha with this up-and-coming mogul. And people got to remember, I mean, Berry Gordy burst onto the scene in 58, 59, 60.
Right.
It was still very, Motown was still in its infancy stages. Right. She signs with Columbia, a guy named John Hammond, the same guy who brought Bruce Springsteen onto the scene. And so Hammond was a huge, at Columbia, was a huge record producer.
Yeah, so she did not go to Motown. She went to Columbia instead. I'm just curious as to what would happen if she had signed with Motown, though.
If she had signed Motown, my personal opinion, Motown would have been bigger than what it was, because we had great women singers at Motown. She'd have been competing against Mary Wells, who was the diva at Motown at that particular time. She'd have been Kim Weston, Kim Weston had a beautiful, even now, a beautiful voice, Kim Weston. Then she'd have had the girls, the Marvelettes, the Martha and Vandellas, the Supremes, of course. So if she had a sign with Motown, Barry would have been like, Motown would have been over the charts.
Maybe too much competition there.
And Barry said something very interesting I think it was last night or the night before. He was interviewed, and they asked him about Aretha. And he said there are some stars that come around once in a decade, and there are other stars that come around just once, and that's Aretha.
That's Aretha.
Linda, you knew Aretha Franklin for many, many years. Was she a competitive person?
Oh, not at all. In fact, she was like a girlfriend to me, and I'm so lucky to be able to say that. But I met her in the early 80s when she first came back to Detroit, and it was a quieter time in her life, and she was on a local talk show, and I asked to do a story about her. At that time, I was with the Detroit News, and I did a story about her, and I used one photograph. And shortly after, I received this magnificent invitation inviting me to her birthday party. Wow. And I went to her party. It was very small. I was telling Thelma about it. Some of the wives of the Spinners were there and her kids. Yeah. And then Cecil Franklin, her brother, the Reverend Cecil Franklin, had called me, and he said, "Don't forget, bring your camera." And I did. And after that point, we became friends, and she would invite me to private parties, and I really got to know her as a girlfriend. And it's funny because she would leave a message, and she would always say, "Linda, it's Aretha Franklin." and then I called back. It was cute. Call back.
I want to go back to the influence that the church had on her life, because she really never left the church. Thelma, you've been to the church many times, in the Bethel Baptist Church. What was the church influence on her?
Well, her dad raised her up as this straight person that did gospel, but she really had other music in her, and he did allow her.
She signed her first record, I believe, at the age of about 18 or so. And the first album was Songs of Faith, recorded at the church. She was only 14 at the time. Columbia, a couple of years later, though. So the church, actually, that was it. Did Reverend Franklin actually push her to become great? He must have recognized that there was something there?
Well, he recognized the talent, to be sure. I mean, she started playing piano at age 6 around home. Singing at church. There's a recording that I only heard in the last recent days of her singing at age 12, and the power and the richness of a 12-year-old. You got to hear it, but he did not, he did not keep her away from secular music. Franklin was very interesting. He actually was one of the first pastors to have his recordings put on vinyl. And so he would have albums of just his sermons. And so when they'd go around the country, Aretha would meet people, blues artists, R&B artists. And so in a way, Aretha grew up most certainly in the church, like a lot of us did. But she also met a lot of people in the world, in secular music, as we call it.
Was there jealousies at all? Because, Thelma, now you can be honest here, Thelma. I want to know, Joe.
We discussed that the other day.
It was, with Motown, I can speak for Motown. Everyone would say, we were jealous of the Temptations and vice versa. It was no jealousy. It was a mutual respect, but it was a thing where on a stage, I'm out to get blood from. I'm out to outperform you. But after that, we were all buddies. Yeah. So your question, jealousy, I would say no.
Yeah.
You got to remember, a lot of Joe knows, they went to high school together. They went to grade school together. They went to junior high together. Smokey and Aretha right around the block. Went to Northern High.
We all lived around each other.
Persian High and Northern. And so these kids, they were kids. Joe, of course, they grew up together.
What do you think that Aretha Franklin is going to mean to Detroit? What do you think?
She's the heart and soul of Detroit. There's no question about it. And now it's time for Detroit to give back to her.
Yes.
We were talking about this in the green room, how there has to be a landmark renamed. There should be a museum dedicated just to Aretha.
Yeah.
And this has to happen, and it should happen. Aretha is to Detroit what Elvis is to Memphis.
There you go.
So we need to do this for Aretha.
We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I like the idea, quite frankly. There's an international school for girls at the old Northern High School, right around the block, essentially, from where she grew up, where she went to high school. I'd love to see the Detroit International Academy for Women be called the Aretha Franklin.
Right. I tell you, Ken, there's your project right there.
We put it out there.
There's no doubt about it. All right, we're going to go after the break here. We're going to head live to New Bethel Baptist Church, where they are honoring the Queen of Soul today. Reverend Jesse Jackson will be speaking in about an hour at the church, and we're going to get an insider's view from the church, and we'll come back and talk about the legacy of Aretha Franklin. Quick break, back in a moment.
I ain't no psychiatrist, I ain't no doctor with degrees. It don't take too much IQ to see what you're doing to me. You better think about what you're trying to do to me. I don't think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, freedom, freedom. I'm opening my head now, and wondering which dress I'm gonna wear.
All right, welcome back. Let It Rip tribute to Aretha Franklin, Ken Coleman, Thelma Stubbs, Mitchell, Joe Billingslea, Linda Solomon joins us here. We're going to first, though, go to Aretha Franklin's church. They're honoring her this morning with an event. Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, will be there. Ingrid Kelly joins us now. Ingrid, tell us what's going on right now at the New Bethel Baptist Church.
Well, good morning, Charlie. As you can see, the pews are filling up here at Aretha Franklin's home church as members come out to say goodbye. And joining me now is Pastor Robert Smith. Again, I can't express our condolences enough. How is the church family doing?
They're doing fine. I do want to thank you for sharing your audience with us. And tell Charlie I want him to bring the message next Sunday so we can keep up the excitement.
Exactly. I will definitely share that message with him. Now, there is another message going on this morning, and I understand that it will be delivered by the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Yes, he's going to pay special tribute to the Queen, and we look forward to it. You know, he knows what to say and knows how to say it.
Do you have any idea about what those words will be like?
I haven't talked with him about what he's going to say, but I know he knows her probably better than anybody. They did civil rights tours together after Dr. King was rejected by a lot of his followers when he protested the Vietnam War. So he lost a lot of his followers, but Aretha, her daddy, and Jesse, they went on tour to study, protest the war, and fight for civil rights.
Exactly. What does this church mean to Miss Franklin? What did it mean?
It was her heart and soul. She loved her daddy. This was her daddy's church, as she would say. And so she just loved it to no limit.
If you could recall one fond memory of Miss Franklin, what would it be?
Well, I guess every moment. When I was a little boy in Pensacola, Florida, one street over from me was Mr. Ted White Sr. My parents ran two little grocery stores, and in those days, you could not only get your grocery pack, but somebody would take it home for you. And I would often take groceries home for Mr. White, and I would see these pictures of this glamorous lady all around every room, really, on everything. And to be here and just have my name connected to hers. Well, as I used to tell her, Miss Franklin, if you just say my name, that makes me happy. So I'm excited all the time when I say Queen of Soul.
I think that sounds a little bit about like divine order, right?
That's right. Well, I often tell people she was the queen, and I was glad to be in the Queendom doing what the queen would have me to do.
Thank you so much. Again, this service starts at 10 a.m. and Reverend Jesse Jackson will take the mic at 11. The doors of the church are open, so this service is open to the public. Back to you, Charlie.
Let me just get Reverend Smith, if I could, for just one moment, Ingrid. If you could ask him, was it difficult for him to take over from the Reverend C.L. Franklin after Reverend Franklin was shot? He went into a coma, and then they brought Reverend Smith in. Get him back there. Don't let him get away.
I'm getting him back. Charlie has a question. Okay, let me find out. Charlie wants to know, was it difficult to take over this church family, this church community after the passing of Reverend C.L. Franklin?
No, these are some of the best people in the world. I've been pastoring 50 years, come May 2019. My seventh church, but Reverend Franklin had taught them to forgive and to give. And their benevolence is unbelievable. Like I say, my major work is in Haiti. I've had churches that told me that God had cursed them and he's going to curse me for helping them. But this church, when I asked them my first year here to help me lead the state in giving for foreign missions, they jumped right in. And of course, we have food stations all over the city.
Okay.
We not only distribute from here, but we distribute in 20 other areas.
Okay. Pastor, thank you for being so kind to us this morning and sharing your time. I know you're extremely busy, so thank you so much. God bless.
you.
Yes. Back to you, Charlie.
All right, thank you very much, Ingrid Kelly. All right, appreciate that. Tell the Reverend Smith I'll talk to him next week. All right, Linda, let me go to you. You knew Aretha Franklin personally. Was she, I hear that she was very private, didn't
Very private, but
reveal a lot.
once she trusted you, you were her friend. And she trusted many journalists and treated us with respect. She never asked me for photo approval or anything like that. But that was because it was a long-term relationship. But I will tell you something about her. Aretha is a national or international treasure. But she chose to live here in Detroit because she could be herself. And she did her own grocery shopping, and she loved to go to the neighborhood deli. And I used to see her at the grocery store.
Where was that picture taken? She was just...
That was on the set of a commercial she shot here, and she invited me to photograph her just in a candid moment. But I have many photos of her without makeup, and she never once said, don't take that. She trusted me, as she trusted other journalists here as well. But the fact that she could live here and be natural, be herself. So when I saw her at the grocery store, I was so excited to see her, and I went up to the cashier as I was checking out, and I said, did you know Aretha is in the produce aisle? And she looked at me, she said, she's here all the time. So with that said, that is how she lived her life here in Detroit, and we have to, always give her the respect that she gave to us.
Let me get to in the Freeway of Love era. She kind of made a little comeback there.
Sure.
Ken Coleman. She actually did a video in Detroit here.
Yeah.
What was that time like?
Great time. I mean, Linda and I we were all talking in the green room. The late 70s, early 80s, 81, 82, slowed down a little bit. She comes back in 1982. The great Luther Vandross produces her album, Jump to It. Freeway of Love comes later, filmed at Doug's Body Shop in Ferndale.
Yep.
Iconic appearance in 1987 at Club Taboo downtown.
Right.
James Brown
I was
special.
there.
You were there. James Brown special for Showtime.
With Wilson Pickett and Bill Cocker.
Can you
and
imagine
Robert
all those folks on the stage at one
see
time
those pictures.
at a club? And she never really left. Linda pointed out she did move away, but she never really left the city. She always came back. And in terms of legacy, I think that's why you've seen the outpour and the emotion over the last several days. Because she's one of those artists from that cohort. A lot of them have left and only come back for occasions. She never really left Detroit.
Real quick, Joe, we have a couple moments left there. Will presidents come to this funeral, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Presidents, kings, everybody's coming.
They'll be here. They'll be here.
Or the Queen.
Yeah, I've already been told by some of them.
Or the Queen.
They'll be here.
You've got some inside information,
I got
do
some
you?
inside
I want some inside information.
I'll tell you, Charlie. I'll tell you.
We'll talk
gotta bring her
afterwards.
back.
I want to bring her back there.
Another
But
show.
listen, she's saying for President Clinton, Obama. She's been honored so much there. I think that she will be remembered so well. We do need a tribute that's going to last to Aretha Franklin.
We've got to do that.
Forever and ever and ever.
I think it's important. We talked again. I mean, she was Memphis's baby. I don't want to see it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No, we don't.
But we want to see it right here in Detroit.
All right.
All right. We're not done yet. Quick break. We'll be back in a moment. Final thoughts on the legacy of Aretha Franklin. Back in a moment. right, Ken Coleman, Thelma Stubbs, Mitchell, Joe Billingsley, Linda Solomon. Let's do final thoughts. Aretha Franklin, we'll start with you, historian Ken Coleman.
All right, I think Aretha had a lot of crowning moments, but I think the most special moment was February 16th, 1968. Mayor Jerry Kavanaugh declares it Aretha Franklin Day in Detroit.
Okay.
She has a concert at Cobo Arena. There are 10,000 people there. Everybody's special. But one of those 10,000 people was the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Thelma Stubbs, Mitchell, your brother Levi Stubbs.
Yeah, to me, Aretha was the best and most greatest singer in the world, besides my brother Levi, of course. And we just loved her. She was always there. And Joe. She was always there for the Stubbs family. Anytime a tragedy happened in our family or anything, Aretha was right there for us.
That's beautiful.
And we plan to do, the Stubbs girls, along with Michael Henderson, plan to do a tribute to her at the Charles H. Wright Museum. September 28th, we'll be there.
Breaking news here on
Yes.
Let It Rip. I love it. How'd the Contour song go? Any Contour song there, Joe?
I don't know.
Come on, Joe. Joe Billingsley.
Do you love me?
Yeah, I do. Aretha liked First I Look at the Purse. That's
She did?
Oh,
Do You Love Me? She liked First I Look. Then I found out
I love that, too.
reason why, because she kept all her money in her purse. So that
She
was-
did.
Yeah.
Is she a person that actually, his job was to carry the purse,
No,
put it
she
on the
did it
piano?
herself.
She did it herself.
I thought I heard that rumor.
She
Somewhere
collected
down
her
the
own money.
line. That's good. Linda Solomon, we've been showing a photograph of that you took of Aretha Franklin. What's a photograph about? And then your personal story.
The jumping jack flash. Well, it was so much fun because you see her in that zebra jumpsuit and the wild hair and everything. But it was so great because she called me. She said, "Linda, you know, I'm arriving at a certain time. You got to get your shot." The minute and I was there to catch her coming out of the limo. But when you talked about Soul Session, that was her only performance with the Godfather of Soul. So I was there at Taboo, and again, she was without makeup in rehearsal. It was really fun.
Oh, it was
Loved
so
it.
good. All right, Aretha Franklin, Detroit's own Queen of Soul. This whole week we'll be talking about Aretha Franklin. I thank you so much. I learned so much from you. Thanks so much. All right,
thank you.
that is it for this edition of our special tribute to Aretha Franklin on Let It Rip.
You know I got it.